Approval on the minutes.
Second.
Thank you so much. They stand without objection. Council, if you will look over your agenda today, we have ordinances, several ordinances on final reading. If you have any comments or questions, please hit your light. All right. We have ordinances on first reading. Please note, under planning item A, there is a item B as well. A revised agenda was sent out for case number 2023-057. It was deferred from May the 9th, so that'll be on your 6 p.m. Agenda, but it's not listed here. So, yeah, so please note that. Councilman Hester.
7A, resolution, I guess
Okay,
we need Ryan to articulate, to explain about that lease agreement
on the resolution 7A.
for the record.
Now you're on your
7A.
agenda session.
Oh,
7A is on the council office.
oh, I'm looking at 6 o'clock, pardon me. It should be under,
Of the
one
economic
second.
development for item B
So it's
regarding
7,
Washington Hills Community Center.
correct, so it's 7B.
B, okay.
Correct.
Yes. Hey, Jermaine.
Yes. What would you like to know, Councilman?
Okay, the lease agreement, tell us the dynamics of that.
Yeah, so this is not uncommon. The Washington Hills Recreation Center is one of the few centers that the city doesn't own. It is owned by the Hamilton County Department of Education. This has been kind of a long-standing lease that we've tried to get in place now for quite a while in order for us to be able to be legally there. It is important for us to have a lease in place just to make sure that we are covered in terms of our physical presence being in the building and using it as a recreation center.
Okay, how long is that lease agreement with the school system?
Let me check with Ryan. I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, we can get you the information.
Okay.
Yeah, but as some of you may remember, because it is a unique building in that it's owned by the school system, but over the years, the city of Chattanooga has also put over $1 million into repairs and maintenance into the building.
Do we have any potential for a swap of land with the school system, with the city of Chattanooga?
We are always interested in entertaining offers from the school district. We are always interested in trying to see what sort of long-term plans we could come to sort of come to a solution that works best for both the city and the school system. And so those conversations are ongoing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chief of Staff.
Yes, sir.
All right, you good, Councilman?
I'm good, I'm good.
All right, thank you. All right, moving down into we're in resolutions. You all see those on the council office, economic development, mayor's office. Any questions or comments, please hit your light. All right, we'll look at next week's proposed agenda items. Any comments or questions regarding next week's proposed agenda? All right. Next, we have our purchasing. Any purchasing questions? We have one purchase, one renewal, 3 RFPs, one emergency purchase, and no sole source. Any questions about purchases? All right, moving right on through. If you could take a look at future considerations, if there are any questions. All right. Madam Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I did have a question under 2A, the community development item related to ordinance changes for abatement by city and lien for cost thereof. Wondered if somebody could fill us in on what we can expect to see change-wise in that language.
Councilwoman Hill, your question again?
So on future considerations, we have an item related to a change to city code that's being brought to us by the administration. Abatement by city and lien for cost thereof, notice hearing appeal subsection C relating to service of notice. So I wondered if you could help us understand what we should be expecting in that language change.
Well, in that language change, it's going to be removing what was erroneously placed into that language. Well, we're making or submitting correspondence to those who are being noted for violations. We send that by certified mail. And in the language, it also indicates that we have to place that in the publications at least for so many days.
Okay.
And for so much additional time. That language being in there will cause us to extend our process that much longer instead of bringing resolution to those violations that are out there.
So you're going to be asking us to allow for the removal of advertising?
Yes.
The issue, okay, all right, thank you, I'll be looking forward to seeing that.
Thank
that
you.
Change language.
You good, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is under Public Works, item 4, the special appointment, the resolution authorizing Jennifer Palmer. It's not about Jennifer Palmer, it's about the position as a landscape inspector. Not long ago, I remember conversation that I brought talking about when we required landscaping for a building project, and let's say, there are trees. I think I brought the example of there were trees along Brainerd Road. A tenant or a building owner just removed the trees that were required when they built the building or bought the structure, whatever the case may be. And now the trees are gone, and we have, what's the point? We don't have any way to go back, and unless they're diseased or something of that nature. But is this in response to situations like that? Can someone answer that question from the administration? Because we have a lot of trees going missing, and we require people to put them in when we build, but then 2 years, 3 years later, whatever the time frame, they remove them for whatever reason, and no one seems to care, and I'm like, why do we even bother? And we're missing trees. And I'm just wondering if this is in response. That would be my question for you, Ben. I took the long route, but
Sure.
waiting for you to get here.
So this position is just specifically an LDO, mostly looking at the in a parking lot type of trees. The landscape inspector on the private property itself, as far as following the landscape guidelines in city code. Public Works Transportation Division inspectors review what's in the city of streets right of way. That's more what you're talking about, the trees that are close to the driveways. And we are looking more closely at maintaining visibility, so they don't put those trees in that need to be removed after people have complaints about trying to see to get in and out. Caleb and Elsie in my office watch those things. And then there's the third level, Pete, our urban forester. He's currently has a job he's currently trying to hire for that will be looking at the long-term long-term maintenance and care of all of our trees, what you're talking about. Like we have some projects now. Councilwoman Byrd just mentioned Airport Road. We planted a whole lot of trees down that street. Several of them have been hit by cars, or a couple of them have died. So we're looking at how to best figure out a process to replace those, and that's what this new position that Pete is hiring for. That's my long way of answering your question. The job here that's being posted is a landscape architect and LDO, mostly looking at the interior to a parking lot stuff. But the other things you're asking about, we are thinking about and working towards addressing for the bigger picture.
Okay, I'll take that as we're working on it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, stay on up here, Ben. Ben, come on back. Thank you. Okay, Madam Vice Chair Hill?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Councilman Ledford, I am glad that you brought that up. I had not thought about our trees from the perspective of how we're so thoughtful in the rezoning process and in the conditioning process with the requirements of given landscape buffers. But our tree ordinance as a city doesn't really have any teeth. Yeah. And within the climate action plan, there are elements that say that we're going to be working toward, as a city, an improved, more robust tree ordinance. And I believe that the tree commission is working on something. But it's my understanding that at this point, we're really only looking at trees on public property. But to your point, we're talking about trees on private property. And by ordinance, exactly. And so, for the record, I guess I'd just like to point out whomever is in charge of, maybe Jermaine, since you're the chief of staff and you're in charge of everybody, I'll just say it to you. As the tree commission is looking at that ordinance, please loop them into this conversation that we're having today, that our tree cover is part of what we think about with zoning, and we need an ordinance that's going to protect our trees moving into the future, not just at the moment of a rezone and a redevelopment.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
All right. All right, is it Madam Vice Chair?
Yes,
Okay. Councilwoman Byrd.
thank you. Following my colleagues, I guess it's Jermaine or Ryan or whoever.
It'll be one of us.
Yeah, be one of you, that's a safe guess. They bring up a really interesting point. We have a lot of, let's say, positive development. In that process, there's a lot of clear cutting. There's a lot of revamping of land. Let's start with Councilman Ledford. We require trees,
Right.
and then the land is revamped, and the trees come out in the revamping. I'd like to see a requirement of those trees being replaced somewhere else.
Somewhere, right.
Yeah. And we did some of that with Shepherd and a Coca-Cola grant along Shepherd Road.
Okay,
And also, does anyone give attention to when somebody comes in and just clear cuts property? I know that sometimes people do it without proper permits, but let's say somebody's doing it with a proper permit. Is there anything in there, because the tree canopy becomes very important with the climate action plan?
sure.
Is there any requirement for me to replace or a certain amount of money for the city to place trees other places?
Not that I'm aware of, but let me get you an answer for that.
Well, if there isn't, it's something that I would like very much to happen.
Okay,
I know that if people clear cut without a permit,
yes, ma'am.
that fine should be a little heftier,
Right,
because they've clear cut for no purpose,
right,
but I would just like to, I think,
yeah.
and
May I
it
ask
is
a-
in the climate action plan,
Yes.
and we're not paralleling it.
So just to make sure that I'm clear, so if a developer has a proper permit to cut down the trees, you want to see an ordinance to make sure that the trees are replaced elsewhere, even
Or
if
a
they're not
like
on
amount,
that
some
site?
amount of money where the city can replace them elsewhere.
Sure, Yeah.
Because if we keep this up, if we grow like we plan to grow, we're
Yes.
gonna lose a lot of trees,
We're gonna
and they're
lose-
old trees.
and we need our trees.
And I'm a tree hugger, what can I say? Yeah.
Tree canopies create shade, yes.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I think it's something we probably need to look at or think about.
Okay, we'll
All
look
right.
into it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good, Councilwoman?
Yes.
All right. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may make one more point to that, Jermaine.
Yes,
The
sir.
reason that it becomes an issue is because it's being pointed out by a lot of folks in my district, and I'm sure if we paid attention, we'll hear this from a lot of other folks now that if it's reported, other people might start paying attention. But when a case comes through Planning Commission and, for example, there's opposition, buffers become one of the most important conversation pieces in a zoning case.
Sure,
And when we lose that enforcement, if those trees or that buffer is not enforced, then I think we erode the trust of people. And I want to make sure that we don't do that.
sure.
I can go all over my district and I can see where someone decided to remove a tree and it's been gone for a year. And I miss those trees. I'm just saying, they were part of an ordinance, and I want us to make sure that we are following up with that, because it's a domino effect, quite frankly, and I'm a little worried about it.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Ledford. All right. Any other questions or comments regarding future considerations? All right. I don't see any lights. Okay, we do not have any departmental reports today. We do have one committee, that is Parks and Public Works Committee. Also, council, we do have an attorney-client privilege session today after our 3:30 meeting. And we also have the honor today of meeting our one applicant for the administrative hearing officer. We'll have his interviews today. And, from there, we'll put it on as a resolution. Is that right, City Attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
Phil? Yes, okay, so we'll put it on as a resolution for a vote. So I believe he's here, our star interviewee. So if you would.
I noticed Chris is headed for the door. No, hi, I'm Michael Mallon. I live in District 2, and I'm an attorney, half attorney, half business person for about a 35-year career. I was told that I have 3 minutes to speak with you, and I'm going to try to keep to that.
All right, we'll help you. Wait, Mike, we'll help you. Could you put
Yeah.
3 minutes on the clock, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being proactive enough. You should always tell a lawyer that 3 minutes and then just turn the mic off. Well, you really put it on there.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, you should have hopefully had a chance. If you haven't, I'd ask you to take a look after we meet. But I sent a cover letter and resumes that cover 3 decades of work and a little press piece from when I last appeared before council. Some of you I'm seeing, for the first time formally. Some of you I've practiced in front of. But I was here in 2017 to talk about absentee short-term vacation rentals relative to concerns that certain educational facilities had. So this conversation's been going on for a while. I wouldn't have imagined then I'd be back now. But this position is sort of the way I see it, and the way I've told some of you is that I guess we're going to kind of lock arms and, step into whatever this next regime is going to be together. I think this is a smart way to do it. I think there are some guardrails that exist. There's some brand new fresh law that just came out of Cincinnati from the U.S. Court of Appeals that is helpful when you're talking about certificates and permits and municipalities and conditions, and we can talk about that more. But the 3 things I offer, I think, are experience, 35 years, half business, half law practice with large law firms, a lot of land use and environmental and administrative law experience, and temperament. I think, given the practice that I've done and the fact that I've been in business all the while, having 2 jobs basically through my career, I think I've got a pretty good feel and some sympathies for the business side of this. I also, born and raised in Chattanooga, have a very good feeling about residential tranquility, and therein lies the case law I just talked about, is this balance of, what can you do to cause someone to have to get a certificate in order to engage in some commercial activity, and what is reasonable to do that, and once they have the certificate, if they're well behaved, maybe they can get a new one. There's some renewal steps in there, and some of the decisions are made by land development, some are made by this new hearing officer position. And it's going to take that kind of, the third thing is track record of the kind of work that I've done, and I think the temperament and maturity that I hope I can bring and offer this council and the administration and our community some assistance as we sort of step off into whatever this new economic paradigm is. But I think it is going to be different than what AHOs have done before. It's going to involve a lot, I think, of larger business interest and a lot of different kinds of pressure. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay on up. Thank you, Mike. That's the easy part. So now, council, if you have questions, please hit your light. First up, we have Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mallon, you mentioned it already, but I've been made aware of also the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals out of Cincinnati with the publishing of that case in the last couple of days. So as Planning and Zoning Chair, that case references new principles related to governmental interaction concerning property rights. As we move forward as a city in the administrative hearing officer appointment process, how do you think this will impact or shape how we interact with property owners? and I have a sidestep into my planning commission role, its impact on future zoning conditions, either by a legislative body or administrational. I think that this is something where I'm going to be asking both RPA and the city attorney's office to follow closely and probably have some sort of educational session for both bodies that I'm a part of. I'll stop there and let you answer that fully loaded question.
I'll be happy to,
Okay.
in parts. First, for just as a courtesy to Phil, it's Knight and Mays versus Metropolitan Government of Davidson County.
Right.
That was reported, just released last week. And as I read the 29-page opinion from the Court of Appeals, it just occurred to me as I was reading it that what you're talking about and what the Court of Appeals has just announced as it has to do with Metro Nashville is there was a condition that was imposed by Metro Nashville on people seeking building permits. You have to build a sidewalk and you have to grant a public easement if you want your permit. And if for some reason it doesn't make sense to build a sidewalk, then, okay, well, you can just contribute to our sidewalk fund and we'll build it somewhere else. The tree canopy conversation a minute ago, it's sort of like credits in some way. It's like environmental credits in a way. And what this case did at the very end, after 28 pages of not much of a nail biter, is they sent it back to the district court. And they sent it back with some instructions on what the district court, the U.S. District Court, needs to do next. So it wasn't decided with finality, but along the way in the opinion, it does give some guardrails. In fact, it says on one page that zoning is okay. It's okay to restrict private property in some ways, but not in all ways. And at some point, it becomes a taking. And less than that, you're not taking the property as long as there's some rough proportionality is the term they use. So I think when I hear that, I think of like asking somebody to give you a rough estimate on fixing your car. So rough proportionality seems to be the standard, and it means if you translate everything I just said over to the certificates that this ordinance about short-term vacation rentals is suggesting, is that it's going to be okay to restrict, but you're going to have some sort of rough proportionality. So if you're balancing neighborhood tranquility with commercial business interests, that's what I think you should be doing, is everybody deserves some recognition and some protection, but neither one of those interests should be completely disqualified. But if you do too much of the commercial activity, then where's the neighborhood tranquility going to go? As someone who's lived here, and I've said this to a couple of you, as someone who's lived here my whole life, and many of us in this room have, the economy, the tourism economy that we have now is something that has grown on the shoulders of people who have been here for many, many years. And it's here now, and I think we all need to be careful not to just forget about, whose shoulders that economy stands on, and not kick to the curb neighborhood tranquility for the sake of profit. And my politics is probably more, free economics than not, but there's a policy issue here. So I'm glad the ordinance exists. I think the ordinance needs some more thinking, and so there'll be a learning curve. But I think this council's off to a good start. It's a good ordinance. It's a workable ordinance. It's not just, to me, it doesn't feel, having read it 9 times, it doesn't feel like, let's just do something and then we'll figure it out. It seems like there was a moratorium, there was a lot of thought, and what's come out of that, to me, makes sense. It's got to be enforced. The enforcement breaks 2 ways. Some of it is land development as far as certificate granting. Some of it is this hearing officer position in terms of renewals and revocations. then there's chancery court in some cases. So I think the procedural process has to really be thought out, and that can all be done. But this thing just needs to be sort of wrung out to what the logical steps are to qualify for a permit, to obtain it, and then to keep it in good standing. So I don't know if I answered everything about the case with respect to Planning Commission. I do think the case provides some good guardrails and some good assurances that certain restrictions and regulations can be imposed on the use of people's private property, but there's a point where there has to be a relationship, or in the old days, as Phil and I would have known it, it's a balancing test. It's a rational basis, so at its essence. So I think whoever sits in this hearing officer position, whether it's me or whether it's me and a co-hearing officer, as Councilman Ledford said earlier, I think you need some people that are going to have some sensitivities to what that balancing is. And I think people who have the privilege of having a certificate need to treat it as a privilege.
Very good. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, Madam Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Mallon, this administrative hearing officer position will hear short-term vacation rental renewals or revocations, complaints about illegal activity, but also will hear noise violations and code violations, some of the things that we as elected officials find the most difficult to solve on behalf of our constituents. So, for example, I would think that probably every one of us has a house or two in a neighborhood that has had 30, 40 code violations and has been through our judicial system to no avail. And it's incredibly frustrating, and our hope as a body is that moving this to the administrative hearing officer, that we're going to have more accountability on behalf of neighbors. And so I understand that perhaps our approach to how we've done things in our court system could be more there's not a word that I can think of that doesn't have negative connotations when it comes to accountability. Maybe that's the one. Could cause people to be more accountable. But how do you think of that when you consider this AHO position, knowing that we are looking for someone who's going to really bring a level of enforcement that we have not been able to count on?
Thank you for that question. The hearing officer position obviously distinguishes itself somewhat from city court because it has more financial gravity, authority. Having said that, I think depending on what the issue is, and it's case by case, there are some people who ought to comply, recidivists, repeat offenders, whatever you want to call them, and who are just, as I've heard, people use the term, it's just a cost of doing business because it's $50. If that's the case, and if that's what you're talking about, then, okay, now it's $500 per violation, and if there's successive violations, then at some point you're talking about some economic teeth, I guess, in the forum. So I'm in agreement with that. What I will always worry about is when someone has fallen on hard times and has code violations because they just simply can't afford to fix something. I don't know in that instance if more fines is better. But I think in terms of people who just feel like it's a cost of doing business, I can just pay $50 and keep offending. I've got I think, pretty good radar for the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, that's it, Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, that's all.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Mallon? All right. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One follow-up on that. Mr. Mallon, if I can, would you see this role, based on that answer to Madam Vice Chair's question, evolving into actually kind of a directing agent to help within the city, even as these unfortunate situations come to you? I feel like you've got a real heart of compassion for situations, and I appreciate what you said about that.
I would hope, and I'm standing up here, I haven't seen a job description.
Well-
As I've said, we're sort of stepping off together into this new economy.
Sure.
And we're going to tag along some items that are in the existing administrative hearing officer list of jurisdiction. But the way I see it is that the inspectors need to be accountable and objective. And where someone ends up before the administrative process, and as I said, if they've fallen on hard times, then yeah, I think referrals are absolutely the right way to go to try and get the problem solved. And money's not going to solve every problem. Punishment is not going to solve every problem. But I definitely, again, born and raised here and watching this economy show up after, I just turned 61. I will tell you that I understand the difference between just recalcitrant business behavior and true difficulty. And there needs to be a lot of compassion for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have our city attorney and then Councilman Smith.
Attorney Mallon, this office, at least under the code on here, allows for there to be up to 2 administrative hearing officers. Do you think you can be able to handle your share of that if it's needed to be done? That's one of the things.
Do I have the right to remain silent?
No.
Phil, I don't know what this is going to bring. I mean, when you've got an overlay, just to pan out a minute, you've got an overlay where there's going to be no more absentee.
Yes.
If it's not grandfathered. And then you've got this long list of commercial areas. And there's a lot of money out there that wants to get to this region of the country. And if that money can buy up all these residences at some cash flow analysis that's based on $300 a night, instead of what an affordable house would cost if this business model wasn't here, there's going to be a lot of this. So, how much of it is going to be denied and get in front of an AHO? I don't know. How much violation there's going to be? That's where the inspectors have to be accountable.
Yes, sir.
I think where I've heard talk about 2 inspectors. I think that's what council and the administration are going to have to watch, is that there's enough inspection assets to really do what you want to do. The prospect of having a second AHO is really no different than, some of our colleagues will sit, from time to time in some of the courts in our county.
That was one other thing I was wondering. Are you doing that for any other municipality where we could participate at all with them? I didn't know about that on your end of it.
No, I'm not.
So it'd be totally for the city at this point. You'll be doing work.
Yes.
And the jurisdictional grounds here under 21-232 now are expanded to like 12 or 13 different categories. So
Right.
just be familiar with all of those categories, because plumbing, gas, mechanical, everything in that regard, the noise issue, and then the aspect of dealing with short-term vacation rentals as well are all included. So that needs to be there.
I'm looking at them and,
Whole bunch.
am I a subject matter expert in electrical and natural gas?
You will need help, yes, sir, no problem, anytime. And that's what inspectors are for.
Or a Holiday Inn Express, I say.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, just being candid, I know what I know, and I know that on the short-term vacation rental front, I can do a very capable job.
Yes.
When it comes to building trades and codes inspections, I don't hold myself out as, being That's not, I'm a lawyer, I'm not, not a contractor.
Yes. And this appointment is to be done by the city council under the code here, and it's for a 4-year term, but it's subject to serve at the pleasure of the council. Just wanted to make sure you knew all that on the front end of it here. And you're also entitled to get some training, at least in that regard, if you're not already available on here. MTAS provides a training course specifically for that, and it allows you to have at least 6 hours of CLE related to this each year based upon this position.
I will be asking for training, and I will be asking for help from, what we mentioned. I mean, from your office.
Yes, sir.
From the inspectors, from council. We're gonna figure this out together, because right now it is still sort of shrouded.
Okay, sir.
But I appreciate all those things, and I did look at, it's a 2015 ordinance, I think that Moses Freeman signed.
Okay, sir.
Our resolution that created the position, and I think it probably just takes TCA into it, so I did look over all that.
Yes, sir. The state law came in initially, and then we adopted the ordinance after that. And there's a 2019 version currently, but the 2019 version doesn't have the add-ons for all of the stuff for short-term rentals, and we'll get you copies of any of that.
Thank you, and I think also I know there's been a little bit of discussion, I watched part of the live stream, excuse me, about city court clerk's office, or, where the sort of the support, the admin support rests for this job that someone's going to do. And I think ethically, we've got to think through all that about,
Yes.
Who can actually touch and hold and keep those records.
Yes, sir.
There's going to be we're going to need a court clerk of some sort.
Yes, sir.
Or some part of one of those offices.
We'll have to work through that. I think right now it says at the attention of the mayor's office, so I'm sure they'll get onto that real quickly. Yes, sir.
All right, is that it, Phil?
That's it.
All right, this is the most I've heard you ask any questions. Wow. Okay, Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, you and I have known each other long enough. I'm not too concerned about your qualifications. I have no doubt you're more than suited. Matter of fact, I'm kind of surprised you got your CV to under 10 pages. That was pretty remarkable in and of itself.
In my speech, under 3 minutes.
And right at 3 minutes. Although I know you can keep on going right now if the clock was still running. So Phil actually touched on a couple of my questions, and in your conversation and responses today, I feel like you've answered a lot of what I was thinking about. But my main one was, do you know what you're getting into? And we all know the answer is no. But I want to know that you're comfortable kind of entering into this. And I feel like you said you were, because we're not 100% sure what it's going to look like either. Phil's question might have seemed like we needed a definitive answer, but ultimately we are asking that question. Are you capable of doing the amount of work? And we don't know how much that's going to be yet. But being willing to work with us based on what that looks like. And ultimately, after some of these questions, are you still interested? Like, is this something, in all seriousness, it is not going to necessarily be an easy thing. It could be nothing for a week. It could be, an entire week's worth of work the next. We're not really sure, and I don't want to mislead you in any way, because we're not 100% sure what that's going to look like either. So just want to make sure that this is something that you're definitely interested in doing before we take this juncture. I'm not sure if anybody else is watching this. They're going to put their name in the hat now, Mike. So you might be our only bet. So I want to make sure you're going to be here for it.
Right.
So I can only defeat myself.
That is correct.
So my first notes, that I kind of marked up my cover letter to all of you, just so I'd remember what to talk about. And my first notes, which you can draw your own conclusions, were excitement because uncharted territory, new economy, challenges, opportunities, public service, proactive. And then under that, it's got a question mark and says job description. So I think we're on the same page. I think it's a new economy. We're going to figure it out together, which I really like. For my attention span, that's better. And we'll figure it out, and we'll have to see what it looks like and see what the workload is and the burden is, and how we make that function. But yes, I'm interested.
All right, so ideally, the workload is not too extreme, right? Because that means that we're having a lot of problems with our ordinances. But at the same time, this is one of those positions that could evolve, probably will, simply because this city is strapped to a $50 penalty for ordinance violations. And there will be areas that we look to, how can we put more teeth into ordinances that this city passes that we expect to be followed, which is the whole point of this position. And this item, short-term vacation rentals, being one of the biggest that we're looking to put over to the AHO right now. We did talk about noise and garbage and a lot of other areas that we're having a really hard time enforcing. But there could be more to come. And with you coming in this at the front end, should that be the position you're accepting and offered, I want you to know that me personally, I would expect all of us, but me personally, we're looking for a partner that can help advise us as well as this is a good idea, this is not a good idea, here's why. Because we do want to create much better enforcement in our city. We have a lot of issues that we hear about all the time, and I'm getting really tired of telling people there's nothing we can do. Or we can only charge them $50, so nobody cares. And all that weight goes to whatever this position is going to be for any level of enforcement above that $50. So I look forward to working with you and getting advice as we move forward on some of those cases, Mike. But thank you very much for being interested. I know it sounds really glamorous, but it's going to be a lot of work, and I really appreciate you stepping up to be willing to jump into this with us.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the glamorous part, but I think it.
Well, you look good, like you thought it was glamorous. Look at you, you look good.
But it's a clip-on.
Okay, got it.
But I mean, in all sincerity, I brought with me, I showed Councilman Ledford before the meeting. This is from March of 2010. This is a thank you letter from my stormwater blue ribbon panel service with the council and the administration at the time, from General Raines thanking me for my service on the stormwater wastewater blue ribbon task force. You guys were talking today about holding tanks. I mean, there are so many things that we need to get in front of, and I've lived this with you for my career. We need to get in front of this one. You know, there's some other ones that we'll just have to see, but this is one that if you don't get in front of it, it's just going to take on its own independent existence, like in your terms, AI would, I guess.
Thank you. I agree with that. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Smith. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Mr. Mallon? All right, I don't see anything else. So with that, thank you so much for coming in and being interviewed. We don't have any more applicants. Applications did close a few weeks ago. So council, with that, are you ready to move forward with a resolution? Councilman Ledford.
I was going to make that suggestion,
Oh,
Madam
yeah, okay.
Chair. Thank you.
All right, so are we ready to move forward with a resolution? I'll just take a head nod on that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, all right, so, city attorney got that under control. All right then, Mr. Mallon, well, we're out on the 30th. So it'll be June the 6th, so you can come on back and hopefully you'll get some votes.
Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, we appreciate you. All right, council, with that, we only have one committee today, that's Parks and Public Works, so I'll turn it over to Councilman Hester, and then we'll have our attorney-client privilege. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councilman Henderson, go ahead.
Thank you. Since we were moving into committees, I just wanted to point out to the council, we were scheduled to have a public safety meeting, committee meeting today, but we have postponed that till next week. And I just want to make sure the council was aware that that will be when we receive our quarterly park report, as well as we will be joined by the chief and for a crime reduction update. And I know several had been asking about that. So next week we'll have our report on our crime reduction update and a quarterly report from park. I just want to make sure the council was aware of that.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? I'm sorry about that, Councilman Henderson. All right, now we'll turn it over for Parks and Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to Parks and Public Works Committee.
Can we accept the minutes? Madam Clerk, 4C, please.
You said 4C. An ordinance closing and abandoning an unopened right-of-way in the 3500 block of Brandon Avenue is detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
D, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning an unopened right-of-way in the 2200 block of April Street as detailed on the attached maps.
I see no hands. 7H, please.
A resolution authorizing Mayor Kelly to execute an agreement with Hamilton County for the court community service program to schedule workers to conduct litter pickup on city streets over fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $60,000.
No hands. Aye.
I want to hear about this one.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Councilman Ledford.
You had me at litter pickup.
Hello, council. So yes, this is the annual contract we have with the Hamilton County Courts to do community service on picking up litter from city streets. I asked them to send me the numbers for 23 pickup, and in 2023, they removed 1.82 tons of litter per month. They work 12 days a month. That's when they have enough candidates to put together a crew to go out and do pickup litter. The candidates end up picking up about 11.63 pounds of litter per person, and they patrol 45 miles per month. Now, these streets are all streets that my crews and citywide services, street maintenance submit to them on where they're getting complaints, either through 311 or you folks report to me. Any questions?
Glad to see it's moving forward, and Mr. Chair, if I may give a shout out to Public Works too for responding to emergency pickups. I know that I have called on several occasions and other constituents have called, and I want to say thank you to the administration and for Public Works and all the employees in Public Works as well that are helping step it up.
Yes.
I'll pass that word along to the gentlemen and ladies. They're doing a great job. Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, Ben. Madam Clerk, aye, please.
A resolution authorizing the city of Chattanooga to allocate $1,702,192.32 from the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act reimbursement of operational expenses to purchase 3 automated garbage trucks, 1 paint truck, 1 thermoplastic trailer with hand liner, 1 passenger vehicle, and GPS tracking for the purposes of completing operations equipment purchases paused during the pandemic.
Thank you. Next Tuesday, Resolution 7G, please.
A resolution renaming the pavilion located in Triangle Park at 4412 Mayfair Avenue to the Melinda Hickey Memorial Pavilion.
Thank you. No hands. J, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute the consent to assignment of all purchase orders for vendor number 872461 KS Ware and Associates LLC to Athena Engineering Environmental LLC relative to the following purchase orders. On-call blanket contract for geo-environmental consulting and construction materials testing services, contract number E21002-301, purchase agreement number 554084, and purchase order numbers 110140 and 113681.
Thank you. K, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Wastewater to award the professional services on-call blanket contract for support of wastewater capital improvements program for ISS, contract number W22015-101, for a 5-year term with no options to renew for the 18 consultant firms that submitted qualifications in the 6 different categories per their qualification package listed. AECom Technical Services, Inc., Allen and Hochel, Inc., Adura Group, Inc., Barge Design Solutions, Inc., Brown and Caldwell, Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company, Inc., Carollo Engineering, Inc., CDM Smith, Consort Engineers, LLC, CTI Engineers, Inc., Gresham Smith, Hazen and Sawyer, HDR Engineering, Inc., Jacob Engineering Group, Inc., Lamar Dunn and Associates, Stantec Consulting Services, Inc., WK Dixon and Company, Inc., and WSP USA Environment Infrastructure, Inc., in the amount of $12 million annually.
I see no hands. This concludes Parks and Public Works Committee. And at this time, we shall go to the conference area for attorney meeting. Thank you.